I'm Julia Coakley, and on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our market briefing this afternoon, which is being delivered by PADA Consulting. I'd like to cover a few housekeeping points, if I may. So please ensure your microphone and your camera is off. And if you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And if we don't have a chance to answer your questions, these will be answered post-event. MGAA market briefings and insights are accredited for the CII CPD hours. This is relevant to your ongoing professional development. The recording of this briefing will be available on our website and on our MGAA YouTube channel. And the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation is kindly being provided by Sunita Pada post-event. We will also be sending you a feedback survey, and I would ask you to take time to respond to this survey post-presentation, as your views are important to the MGAA team and we make every effort to act upon your suggestions. So please take 2 minutes just to complete that during the course of the rest of the week. So today's webinar, DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, is being delivered by Sunita Pada, founder of Pada Consulting and Ever Comply. Boasting over a decade of unparalleled expertise in the insurance sector, Sunita has been instrumental in regulatory engagement with a prominent GI motor and home insurer, holding distinguished senior roles at firms such as Howden Broking Group, XL Catlin and Lloyds. Sunita's pragmatic approach to compliance has always been rooted in a deep understanding of both business and regulatory landscapes. So Sunita, if I can hand over to you.
Yep, thank you, Julia. Thanks for the intro and welcome all. And I hope you're all here for the Digital Operational Resilience Act. I know this follows on from the Operational Resilience training session that was delivered a few weeks back. And I did touch upon DORA and there was a request for a follow-up session. So in this session, I will describe the purpose and structure of DORA, explain the 5 pillars of DORA, summarise the systematic approach for DORA compliance and some of the challenges, and then there is a synergy between DORA and operational resilience guidelines. Currently, the legal framework for ICT risk and operational resilience is really fragmented. So the European regulatory authorities are looking to harmonise this and bring into scope, establish a comprehensive cross-sector digital operational resilience framework. This will apply to all regulated financial institutions across the EU. So what's it aiming to do? To improve the alignment of business strategies, conduct, ICT risk management, and eliminating that fragmentation and deploying more proportionate resilient testing framework. So that whilst this has a lot of synergies to the operational resilience requirements, there are also some nuances that you will need to be mindful of, which I'll go through. So here's the timeline. It all started about 16th of Jan 2023. Well, actually, there was a little bit before that, but this is the official commencement of DORA. So if you think about it, you've got to have it all done by the 17th of Jan 2025, and we're halfway there already. So 17th of July, the European Commission is set to adopt the delegated acts as part of DORA with the technical advice from the European supervisory authorities. So this should have been due by the 30th of September 2023. The one thing that I will say, there have been a number of delays, but it gives you a shorter implementation time. So as soon as we've got more information, I will make sure I pass it through the MGAA for onward communication to all of the members this impacts. And then the forthcoming regulatory technical standards will outline the key oversight requirements, such as establishing an EU subsidiary within 12 months, operational resilience, subcontractor due diligence, compliance with security, reporting and investigative obligations, So it's a really comprehensive framework. And what it aims to do is bolster the digital operational resilience across the EU's financial sector. So who does it apply to? It applies to all financial institutions. So it applies to insurance intermediaries. So that also includes MGAs, reinsurance intermediaries, ancillary insurance intermediaries, insurance and reinsurance companies, data reporting service providers. So it's a whole heap of like organizations that this applies to. So when you do your gap analysis and your assessments, which we'll come on to, you should make sure that you fully document if you feel you are not in scope. So DORA is broad, very prescriptive, especially around ICT and cyber resilience. So I think the real focus has been since, a number of things happening, COVID happening, and, we've had more failures on third-party suppliers, especially with cyber risks. So that's why there's an enhanced focus on this across Europe, but also in the UK as well, as we've talked about before. So understanding DORA's jurisdiction is really critical. So you've got to understand the implications, especially if you're part of a group. So you've got to look at the implications and the impact. So DORA covers topics relevant to financial services firms in the EU and the UK, but it goes deeper in the areas, as I've said, as ICT and cyber resilience. So a bit deeper compared to current UK regulatory requirements. So UK entities must promptly ascertain if they're under DORA's purview, considering its wide range of covered financial markets activities. You've really got to do that assessment to determine whether you're in scope or which part of your group or entities are in scope. Even entities fully versed in the financial markets resilience regulation will still need to do something. So if, for instance, you implemented operational resilience across the UK and thought best practice, we're going to do that across Europe, and then also there is a requirement across Europe for you to be doing that, there is further work that you still need to do. It's not to say that you have to start from square one, but there is further work. And this alignment is essential. So as I've already mentioned, particularly in areas such as third-party risk management, and that's with current and forthcoming UK regulatory requirements as well. As I've said, half of that 2-year window is already passed, especially when you need to be compliant by January 2025. So the opportunity and challenges. So uniform EU-wide DORA requirements will have a consistent ICT and cyber resilience maturity across all EU operations. The 2-year readiness window requires proactive actions. So you've got to have done a gap assessment. If you haven't done that, you need to be thinking about doing your gap assessments. You've got to look at your maturity against DORA to identify the areas that you need to prioritise. So when I mean evaluate your maturity, so you've already done some work around operational resilience and your important business services. So use that work and build on it. Address the complex DORA requirements, especially around areas around third-party risk management, advanced technology resilience, so the testing and the threat-led penetration testing that you need to do, which I'll touch upon later, and then the incident reporting and threat intelligence sharing, which we'll touch on later as well. So it is a major shift, and it's a major shift for all organisations that are under the scope of the EU regulators. So that's the European supervisory authorities. So DORA's expanded scope now encompasses the crypto asset service providers, intermediaries, managers of alternative investment funds, cloud services, and other ICT third-party service providers. So the list is quite extensive. So that gap analysis becomes really important. And actually the work that you've done on operational resilience and mapping your journeys becomes really important too. And as I keep stressing, that strong emphasis on the third-party risk management. So both regulations, such as, when I mean both, Operational Resilience and Digital Operational Resilience Act, so they both aim for specific and complementary outcomes. So identifying your important business services. So in Ireland, firms should already have identified their key business services. So DORA requires you to understand these critical or important supported functions. So what are these critical, important functions? So you've got to identify those, and you can use your key business service mapping exercise to help you and support you with that piece of work. Mapping of dependencies. So in the IBSs of firms, you're often reliant on third parties or ICT services, third parties. So within that, you will have already identified that. So again, you can take those out of your journey mapping and look at your gap analysis and the additional work that you need to do. So that mapping done for operational resilience can help capture that essential data for DORA compliance. Scenario testing, again, this is a requirement for operational resilience, that stress and scenario testing. But for DORA, this has distinct requirements for ICT services. So whilst for operational resilience, you're looking broader when you're doing your stress and scenario testing, and sometimes bringing in scope your third parties, there are specific requirements when you're doing your scenario testing for DORA. So again, you've got to make sure that your testing methods demonstrate resilience against DORA. Again, utilize existing tools and platforms. So consider the sustainability of current operational resilience approaches. Use existing tools or technology that you've used for operational resilience for your technology platforms for DORA. So, but it is important that you grasp the full DORA regulation. It's not going to go away. It's in addition to operational resilience. This allows the EU regulators to measure operational resilience, not just within your specific firms, but across specific sectors. And as I've said, there are significant overlaps, so do leverage the work that you've done on operational resilience to start building upon the work that you need to do for DORA. So the implications for ICT service providers. DORA has enhanced expectations for ICT service providers, especially those that have been categorized as critical. So these critical ICT providers will now fall directly under the regulatory oversight. So the regulators are really keen to understand who are these critical ICT service providers, and then they will be brought into scope for under the regulatory regime across Europe. These providers, they must conduct thorough evaluations of their duties under DORA. So you might be relying on some of these service providers. You don't rely on the work they've done. You still have to do your due diligence of your third parties. But you will have already done some work on operational resilience. But what this may require you to do is to review the contracts you currently have in place, not just with ICT service providers, but with other third parties as well. It may be a piece of work that you're doing under your operational resilience work. If not, then it's something that you will need to consider for DORA. So DORA's primary aim, as I've said, is to bolster the operational resilience of the financial sector, but real focus on those critical third service providers, because a failure in a critical service provider could have major consequences across any particular given sector. So DORA has 5 pillars. So the first is ICT risk management. So risk tolerances for critical important functions are similar to impact tolerances for IBSs. So identification and mapping of critical or important functions is required, as well as defining severe but plausible scenarios, and making sure that your board have appropriate visibility, accountability, training, and are fully versed on DORA. So that often gets missed because the work's getting done further down the chain, but the board do need to show that they have oversight of this. The second one around ICT related incidents. So there'll be a new classification or notification reporting criteria. So with regulatory technical descriptions released January and July 2024, and these will include impact and root cause requirements. So more to come in this space. So again, we've got to be looking out for the regulatory notifications in January and July of next year. On 3, the digital ops testing, digital operational testing, so annual testing of critical systems and applications, and these should include threat-led penetration testing with the potential of some pooled testing. So that's bringing into scope a broader scope just to identify those kind of severe but plausible scenarios, testing those out, but and plausible may not be just one organisation. So for those of you who are familiar, the PRA normally do kind of broader resilience testing with big insurance firms. So there may be something of a similar ilk in terms of how this will be tested across Europe. The fourth one, ICT third-party risk management. There's specific terms and clauses to be included in outsourcing contracts. A key part of this will be to show multi-vendor resilience, understanding and guarding against concentration risk. And that essentially means that you've got to make sure that you've got appropriate oversight, you're satisfied that they've got the appropriate control framework in place. And also from a regulatory perspective, like in the UK, on operational resilience and third-party risk management, what you were required to do was not just identify who your outsourcer is, but you have to go right through the chain. So if who you're outsourcing to sub-outsources and there's a sub-outsourcing arrangement, you've got to identify all of those. Why? Because the concentration of risk may not be with that direct outsourcer. It may be further down the chain where you have a sub-outsourcer arrangement providing a service to many of these third-party arrangements. And then on the fifth one, we've got information and intelligence sharing. So this is a potential for centralized reporting hub, assessing cyber threat across Europe and vendor concentration risk across markets and industry. So that allowing firms to be better prepared should there be an actual event. So on the first one, ICT risk management. So you've got the key requirements there. Governance principles for ICT focus on the accountability. I already mentioned about the board and having an accountable individual who is responsible for the implementation of this. Risk management framework, so making sure that this includes your risk appetite and your tolerance. Identify your critical important functions, again, using your work that you've already done on operational resilience. Map your ICT assets that underpin all of the above. So again, you might already have done some of this work through your IBSs. And specific prevention, detection, response and recovery plans. So those communication plans again. So it's not saying you've got to have two separate pieces of work. You should kind of entwine the two. What are the implications? So you've got to have a need for a comprehensive ICT risk management framework, establish and maintain resilient ICT systems and tools, identify and document your critical functions, monitor your ICT risks and making sure that you've got protective measures in place, promptly detect any anomalies and have robust BCP plans, learn and adapt from both internal and external ICT incidents. So whilst there will be a central register of these major incidents, any incidents would need to be notified to the home state regulator. So in this case, the Republic of Ireland, because they will have an obligation for that onward reporting, because there will be continuous lessons learned from this process. ICT related incidents, so standardized reporting for serious ICT incidents across Europe, facilitate enhanced responses and cooperation between the authorities, as I've just mentioned. So what you've got to do is making sure that you create a process to classify and log all of your ICT incidents. So again, no different to login risks, is it a red, amber or green, has something crystallized, and it's that immediate notification to your regulator. How you determine and report major incidents based on the detailed criteria and using the standard templates as developed by ESAs for incident reporting. Digital operational testing. So again, building on your stress and scenario testing plans that you've got for operational resilience. Again, as I said, this is slightly different in some aspects, because whilst you'll have your plans in place and your testing programs, critical firms need to organise large-scale threat-led live penetration tests every 3 years. So if a service provider or a firm has been identified as critical, they will have to do specific testing, penetration testing every 3 years. And these should be performed by independent TIBA EU testers. Now, you're probably sitting there going, yep, what's a TIBA EU tester? Well, it stands for Threat Intelligence-Based Ethical Red Teaming. So this is where you get an external group of people who come in and they kind of work with the authorities and service providers and have these controlled cyber attacks to assess and improve cyber defenses within a firm. Typically, you'll have a blue team, so they're the internal staff of the target, like a target entity. So that's your internal team, and they're the ones that are defending. Then you've got your threat intelligence provider. So that's the team who are going to identify any potential threats and conduct the investigation, and that will be the regulator. Then you've got the red team provider. These are the people who are going to try and simulate an attack. And then you've got the white team, and they're informed members within your organisation managing the test in coordination with the TIBA cyber team. And that's a mouthful, by the way. And so that's quite a big ask. So if you're a critical firm, there's a lot of work to do. Scenarios must be pre-agreed by the regulator in advance. Firms will receive a compliance certificate upon completion. So definitions of critical firm and test criteria are yet to be published. So as I said, January and July of next year are 2 key dates when we're expecting publications from the European authorities. What are the implications? So you need to conduct an annual ICT test. So again, no different to the operational resilience testing. Address any detected weaknesses and counteractive measures. Carry out advanced threat-led penetration testing periodically for those critical firms, and ensure third-party providers are part of your testing. Not every time, but your key third parties, whether it's for operational resilience or DORA, you should be bringing them into scope for your stress and scenario testing. ICT third-party risk management, as I keep stressing this because this is a real focus. You've got to look at, I suppose you've all got your outsourcing registers, but you've got to look at this in a different lens as well. All of your kind of multi-vendor, ICT, third-party suppliers. So what is your current risk strategy and policy? Who's it owned by? So it needs to be owned by the board. That's why the board need to be fully versed on all of these things. You need to maintain that register of all your ICT third-party providers and services they provide and functions they underpin. So don't forget, it's not just the immediate relationship. You've got to identify any sub outsourced arrangements within that third-party arrangement. Report any changes to the register annually to your regulator. You've got a plan with these third parties. You've got to have an exit strategy. There's been a couple of incidents and you think they're quite weak in terms of their resilience. and you can't really justify working for them, you need to have that exit strategy, and that should include, well, where to next. And then guidelines on some of the contract content. So watch this space. What are the implications? You've got more monitoring and oversight of these ICT third-party providers, harmonise the service elements and relationship parameters, maintain and report a register of your outsourced activities, adhere to the European Oversight Framework recommendations, consider risk from IT concentration and the sub-outsourcing element, and ensure contracts with third-party service providers contain all of the necessary details. And then about the information and intelligence sharing. So DORA introduces guidelines on setting up information sharing arrangements between firms. And this is for firms where there have been cyber threats, including confidentiality requirements and the need to notify the regulators. So there is going to be one repository of these threats or incidents so that others can learn from them. So setting up an arrangement for exchanging cyber threat information and implementing mechanisms to act on information provided by the authorities. So if there is an increase in incidents, you will be hearing from the authorities, and it's what you do with that. So it's not, we've done it, we've implemented DORA, we've implemented operational resilience, tick, tick, put it away on that high shelf until somebody asks for it. It's a live document, and it should be used regularly. So what are the steps for implementation? Go beyond just checking the list of in-scope entities. Assess your geographical reach and all of the entities within a group structure. Review the contracts with ICT third-party providers and all of their subcontracting arrangements. And consider what intra-group arrangements you have and how they may impact DORA. So why would you want to do all of that? Well, it ensures that you haven't overlooked any aspect of the regulations. So you've checked everything through, and if there's nothing to see, you've documented it. Nominate a DORA champion or a lead project manager. So choose someone who's well acquainted with the DORA requirements, and it may be the same person that's currently doing your operational resilience, but you must note that there should always be executive sponsorship and board engagement. So the board, as I said earlier, should receive training to ensure they are fully versed on the requirements of DORA and their respective roles and responsibilities. This person is the day-to-day person who will be the point of contact to ensure successful implementation. This person should coordinate readiness and compliance activities across the organisation. As I said, it provides a centralised point of contact and that responsibility and oversight should there be any questions. And it also ensures a coordinated approach to compliance. Make sure you understand the 5 pillars of DORA. Become familiar with the areas of risk management, incident reporting, resilience testing, ICT third-party risk management and information sharing. Review your existing risk management frameworks and make any changes or alignments with the DORA requirements. Make sure you understand what your new reporting requirements are. If you maintain a regulatory reporting calendar, make sure you add DORA to that. Ensure your contracts with third-party providers align with DORA and the operational resilience requirements. So don't do the exercise twice, just do it once. Consider opportunities for threat intelligence sharing with other entities. So there'll be more guidance in this space. So we'll watch this space and then we'll be able to provide you with more information. So why is that important? Understand the core areas to ensure that there's comprehensive compliance and identify the areas of potential risk and also any areas where you need to make enhancements. Implementing DORA, choose a systematic framework suited to DORA's requirements, conduct a gap analysis, Design kind of sub-projects for each of the pillars if you need to. Align those sub-pillars with your operational resilience so you're overseeing both pieces of work under one umbrella. Keep flexibility in approach since further rules will be released during the implementation window. So while half of the work should have been done, there's still going to be a lot more work to be done in this space. And we await the final standards for those. As I said, that's January and July next year. This ensures a structured and thorough implementation and allows for adaptability as the new guidance emerges. Staying updated on the technical standards. So monitor the publication of the 2 tranches of the technical standards. These are available on the CBI website. Understand the specific elements and criteria provided in each tranche. Prepare for the standards to be adopted by the European Commission in 2024. And staying updated ensures compliance with the latest regulation and prepares you for your future requirements. Prepare for compliance by January 2025. Excuse me. Use the details provided in the DORA regulation and start early preparation to ensure full compliance by January 2025. So if you haven't done any work on DORA as yet, I would start thinking about DORA at the same time as your operational resilience work. This early preparation will help with smooth implementation and it will support the broader goal of enhancing digital operational resilience across the European financial system. So what are the next steps? Conduct a gap analysis, evaluate current digital resilience strategies against DORA requirements to identify areas that need improving or enhancing. Develop a DORA compliance roadmap. So look at a detailed plan outlining all the steps that you need to take to achieve full compliance within the timelines and the resource that you've got allocated. If you can, invest in technology, upgrade and strengthen digital infrastructure and cybersecurity systems to meet the enhanced security standards set by DORA. Enhance your training and awareness programs, so making sure that all of your employees are aware of digital operational risks and DORA compliance, and also this includes executives and your board. Establish robust incident management protocols, so develop or refine your incident response requirements and management procedures to effectively handle and report digital operational disruptions as required by DORA. This is already a requirement, so if there was something that had an impact on your day-to-day operations and it disrupted your operations, any kind of ICT or system outage, you should be reporting that or notifying your regulators of that, even if it's pending investigation. It's always best to over-report than under-report. You should follow a top-down approach to deploy frameworks. Start by embedding the core principles of resilience at the very top of the firm and operationalizing them into the strategies and action plans for key domains of resilience. So that's your crisis management, business and IT continuity, cyber defense, IT recovery, and third-party resilience. So DORA emphasizes the need for financial entities to enhance their ICT resilience. So monitor your third-party risks, regularly test your systems, report any ICT-related incidents, and share information about cyber threats. So hopefully I've given you a flavour of DORA, going through the 5 pillars, summarising the DORA compliance and the potential challenges, and touching on the synergies between DORA and the operational resilience guidelines. And now I will hand over to any questions. I will have to rely on Julia unless actually if I stop sharing, then I'll be able to see everyone.
That's fine, Sunita. Don't worry. I'll monitor any questions in the chat box. So just for delegates, thank you very much for staying with us on that really complicated presentation to a degree, but I think very well explained, very clearly and very concisely, Sunita. So thank you so much for that. I don't actually have any questions in the chat box just at this moment, which I think is hopefully a good sign that you've covered everything off for our delegates as to what they would like to know about. I do have another question though that isn't actually related to DORA, so perhaps we could focus on that but come back to any questions that we might have. So for our delegates, do please feel free to consider questions and drop them into the chat. We do have plenty of time. So I've got a question, as I say, not related to DORA, but we're a small organisation and we find it a huge struggle to keep up with the regulatory landscape. Should we look more to compliance platforms or increase staffing in this area?
That's a really good question. I mean, we've come across a number of these challenges, not just with smaller firms, actually with larger firms too. There seems to be a huge demand for compliance resource and a very short supply of what I would say good compliance resource for the price that they are demanding or commanding. And on that note, in the UK, we've actually developed a platform called Ever Comply. And whilst it's only for UK and solo regulated entities at the moment, we have got plans to expand that. It basically becomes a compliance team in a box. So you get a core framework, and then you can add on different modules. So whether it's your policies, whether it's detailed procedure guidance, and what we're currently developing and rolling out in Q1 next year is a consumer duty outcomes dashboards. So and then a lot more, and using AI, connecting that to handbooks and guidance documents to be able to provide instant responses to queries. So yes, we are certainly working in that space and developing something, and that was actually born out of the problems that a lot of firms are having. So if anyone's interested, do reach out, and no obligations demo if you want.
Thanks, Sunita. It's timely and a great opportunity, I think, for promotion of Ever Comply, but it's good to know. It's really good to know. So we don't have any further questions. So I think unless there are any last minute queries into the chat box for Sunita, while we've got you, Sunita, what's the next? Is it something you're aware of or something that you can perhaps anticipate? What's the next piece of regulatory work could you anticipate, particularly for our members in the Republic of Ireland, that they should look out for, or perhaps even is importantly running in alongside this piece of work?
And I think that the next piece of work is around the individual accountability framework. So a bit like, for those of you familiar with UK regulatory requirements, it's the CBI are now following the SMCR regime. So it's the individual accountability framework is looking at enhancing requirements around fitness and propriety, around conduct rules, and then there's additional obligations for the larger firms and the insurance firms. And so that wouldn't be applicable to MGAs, but there will be a note coming out on that. And I think I've been asked to do a session on that for January. So those of you who are interested in what you need to be doing around the individual accountability framework, then please do register for that. Feels like these questions have been planted and there's a bit of a plug, but it isn't. There's a session, I think Tim's put it in for January sometime, but I have just finished updating a bulletin or a note that will go around, because the requirements are, I think the deadline is end of this year, which isn't long.
Long at all. Thank you for that, Sunita. I do have another question. Hi, Sunita. Regarding the gap analysis, will the January/July publications change what we are currently measuring gaps against? And then separately, there's a question, does the MGAA have a standard template for the gap analysis? So I'd answer the latter question, no, the MGAA do not, but if this is something, Sunita, you could help with, we would be, sorry to put you on the spot there, but we would be incredibly grateful.
Yeah, I mean, what I can do is I can go and have a look. I mean, it's I'd need to go through the rules, and I haven't I haven't really touched upon them in detail. So there's the two tranches, then there's and you can't really say, because it's a bit like in the UK, 9 times out of 10 when a consultation paper comes out, you think, well, we kind of know it's going to be, the policy statement is going to be more or less the same, but it's that 1 in 10 chance that it's not. So as soon as something comes out, I can have a look at it and look to put a high level template together for some form of gap analysis. I'm writing it down because I will forget.
Thank you. No, I'm we can make a note of that as well, Sunita. Thank you. Okay. Are there any more questions from our delegates for Sunita? Again, making the most of her fantastic knowledge and expertise on all things ROI, regulatory and compliance. Okay.
If anybody wants to drop me an email, if they don't want to ask the question here, then I'm happy to respond to those too.
Thank you. That's kind of you, Sunita. Thank you. Okay, so with no more questions that I can see in the chat box, it does leave me to say thank you so much, Sunita, for your time today. We really do appreciate you talking to our members. In our member research that we conduct every other year, the compliance support it comes out top of the most required benefit of being an MGAA member, and as I say, your knowledge and expertise in this area fantastically supports our members, so we're incredibly grateful that we can partner with you on this. I'd say to our delegates, again, as I said at the top of the meeting, the MGAA team really value your feedback, so if you could complete the feedback survey, and also please bear in mind, if you'd like to learn more about the regulatory and compliance landscape, both for the ROI and for the FCA, the UK, we have our Compliance Insights meeting, which is on Tuesday, the 12th of December at 11 a.m, which again, Sunita hopefully will be joining us then, along with David Ellison from ICS. So thank you all very much indeed. Hope you'll have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you again on a market briefing or an insights meeting from the MGAA soon. So take care now, and thanks very much.